My dad casually said it. At dinner, "You make more, you should contribute more," then told me to cover my brother's rent. So I looked him in the eye and replied, if he earns less, he should demand less. I'm 29, single, no kids, and according to my dad, that makes me the default family. ATM. Growing up, my parents weren't cruel, but they had this habit of making everything about my younger brother, Ryan. He's 26, charming, loud, and perpetually struggling. If I got an A, they'd clap. If Ryan passed a class, they'd throw a party. I didn't really mind at first. He was the baby, and I was the responsible one. But somewhere along the line, being responsible turned into being responsible for him. I work in it. Not flashy, but I've worked hard to move up the ranks, save diligently, and create a life where I don't have to stress over every bill. I drive a modest car, live in a small but nice apartment, and keep most of my money tucked away. It's not a lavish life, but it's stable. That stability, however, seems to paint a target on my back and my parents' eyes. Ryan, on the other hand, has been trying to find himself since he was 18. First, it was a photography phase. My parents bought him a $2,000 camera, which he sold within 3 months to buy a drone. Then it was music, then real estate. Now he's dabbling in crypto and streaming video games. Every time he fails, there's an excuse. And every time he needs help, my parents act like the world should bend to accommodate him. A few years ago, after a particularly nasty car accident in the family, we decided to set up a joint emergency fund. It was supposed to be a safety net for all of us. Dad said it would be good to have something communal in case things ever got bad again. I agreed, but over the next 3 years, I was the only one putting money into it. I didn't complain. I had a good job, and it gave me peace of mind. I never imagined they'd use it for anything else. So when I walked into Sunday dinner last month, I didn't expect anything unusual. The smell of garlic and rosemary filled the house, and my mom was already bustling around the kitchen while Ryan scrolled through his phone on the couch. Same as always, Dad greeted me with his usual firm pat on the back and a quick, "How's work, son?" before taking his seat at the head of the table. We made small talk for a while, football, the weather, something about my aunt's new hip, until we were halfway through dinner. That's when it happened. "You'll be covering your brother's rent from now on since you make more," my dad said casually, like he was talking about passing the salt. At first, I thought I misheard. I looked up from my plate, fork halfway to my mouth. What Dad didn't even glance up. "Ryan's lease is up. The new place is more expensive. He needs help. And since you've got a better paying job, it just makes sense. Family helps family." I waited for the punchline, but all I got was silence. Ryan didn't even flinch. He just kept eating like nothing out of the ordinary had been said. My mom avoided eye contact, which told me everything I needed to know. "Are you serious?" I finally asked. "Dead serious," Dad replied, sipping his wine. "You've been doing well. It's time to give back. Your brother needs a hand." "I already help out," I said. "I cover emergencies. I paid for Ryan's truck repair last year. I helped when the basement flooded. I'm not made of money." Dad shrugged. "This isn't about money. It's about family. You think your brother wants to need help? He's trying." I looked at Ryan. He didn't even pretend to look guilty. In fact, I swear there was the hint of a smirk playing on his lips. "I don't remember agreeing to this," I said calmly. Dad finally set his fork down. "It's not a request, James. You're part of this family. You live alone, no kids, no wife. You've got the means. It's your turn to step up." The room went silent. I could feel my blood start to simmer, but I didn't show it. I just nodded slowly, pushing the rest of my plate away. "Got it," I said quietly. Nobody noticed the way my hands tightened into fists under the table. Nobody saw the way my jaw clenched so tightly it started to ache. They just assumed, like always, that I'd swallow it, that I'd take the hit so Ryan didn't have to. That night, I drove home in silence, barely remembering the route. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't even vent to anyone. I just sat in my living room staring at the wall for a long, long time. The thing is, I had the money to cover Ryan's rent. That wasn't the issue. What broke something inside me was the entitlement of it. The expectation that my hard work should be funneled into Ryan's never-ending list of failures because I was the stable one, because I didn't make waves, because I'd always been the one to quietly do what needed to be done, but not anymore. The next morning, I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into the joint emergency account. The number staring back at me made my stomach twist, not because of what I was about to do, but because of how long I'd let it sit there untouched while they quietly assumed it was theirs to dip into. More than $50,000. Every cent is mine. Every deposit is traceable to my paychecks. I'd always thought it would be used for something real. Hospital bills, an accident, maybe something for mom if she got sick. Not this. I initiated the transfer to my personal savings. All of it. It would take until the afternoon to process. I didn't send a message. I didn't leave a note. I just walked away from my computer and went to work like it was a normal Monday. By noon, my phone was vibrating off the desk. First it was Ryan, then Dad, then Mom. A few missed calls turned into a flood. Then the text started. "Did you touch the joint account? We're missing money? Call me now. This isn't funny. James. I let them sit. I didn't reply. I just kept working. Then the real messages came. I had a mortgage payment scheduled from that account. "Your mother is in tears. You had no right. You're being selfish. This isn't how families treat each other. And finally, if the money isn't back in by tonight, don't bother showing up here again. That one hit a little differently. I stared at it for a long time. The audacity, the complete lack of awareness, the refusal to even ask why I might have done it. There was no curiosity, only anger that their free ride had ended. I realized then that the account wasn't an emergency fund in their eyes. It was a piggy bank, my piggy bank, and I just smashed it before they could get their hands on it. I didn't reply. Not yet. Let them stew. Let them wonder. That was the moment something in me shifted, and that's where this story really begins. The silence lasted all of 12 hours. By the time I woke up the next morning, I had voicemails from my mother that I couldn't bring myself to listen to. You could hear the panic in the transcript preview. Her words clipped and frenzied, bouncing between confusion and that high-pitched, breathy guilt tone she always used when she wanted me to fix something without actually apologizing. Ryan, of course, didn't call. He texted something short, something smug, real mature. Bro, hope you feel good about screwing over your own family. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready for that part yet. I needed to think, to breathe, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had room to do just that. But then my dad showed up at my office. Now I work for a mid-sized IT consulting firm. Not a flashy place, but respectable. My job is mostly remote, but I still go into the office twice a week when clients come in. Tuesday was one of those days. I was at my desk reviewing server logs when I heard the receptionist voice over the intercom. James, there's someone here asking for you. Says he's your father. My stomach tightened. I hadn't told him where I worked. Not specifically, but I knew Mom still had access to old tax returns. And if he wanted to find me, he would. I stepped out into the lobby, trying to keep my expression neutral. Dad was standing there in his usual button-up and windbreaker, hands on hips like he was about to deliver a lecture. The second he saw me, his jaw set in that familiar way that meant this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a declaration. "We need to talk," he said without even a greeting. "I'm working," I replied. "This won't take long." He didn't wait for permission. He turned and walked toward the parking lot, expecting me to follow, and against my better judgment, I did. We ended up standing next to his truck, just far enough from the building to be out of earshot. He folded his arms and stared at me like I was a child who'd just drawn on the walls with a marker. "What were you thinking?" he said. I didn't answer. "That account was ours. You don't get to just take the money and disappear." "Mine," I corrected. "Every deposit into that account came from my paycheck. You can check the history. You never added a cent," he scoffed. "That's not the point. The point is that money was there for us. Your mother and I counted on it. For your mortgage, I said, for Ryan's rent, for everything except what it was meant for." His face rained. "Watch it." "I am watching. I've been watching for years." And that was when he said it. "You're punishing your own brother because you're jealous. You've always been like this. You never could stand when Ryan got attention." That hit harder than I expected. I'd spent my whole life trying to not resent Ryan, to be the good son, the helpful one, the quiet achiever. But hearing it thrown in my face like some kind of character flaw broke something in me. "I'm not jealous," I said, my voice low. "I'm done." He narrowed his eyes. "Is that how it is now? You think you're better than us because you've got a little money in the bank?" "No," I said, stepping back. "I think I'm tired of being treated like a tool you can pick up when it's convenient and toss aside when it's not." He shook his head. "You know what? If you're going to act like this, don't bother coming around anymore." I almost laughed. "You already said that in your text." I meant it. Good. We stared at each other for a moment, and then I turned and walked back inside, heart pounding but lighter than it had been in years. But that was just the beginning. The next week was a parade of passive-aggressive escalation. Mom sent me a long message, one of those guilt-laced manipulative essays that only she could write. It started with, "I'm not mad, just heartbroken," and ended with a classic, "I hope you can live with what you've done." Ryan went on social media making vague posts about betrayal and snakes in the family. One of his friends DM'd me a screenshot of his Instagram story where he posted a picture of his nearly empty apartment with the caption, "When your own brother would rather watch you get evicted than lift a finger." What he didn't say was that the apartment was a luxury high-rise downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a building concierge. Rent had to be $2,400 a month minimum, and he wasn't even working. He had options. He just didn't want to take them. Then came the group chat ambush. We have a family group text mostly used for holiday plans and birthday reminders. One night, as I was settling in to read, I saw a message pop up from my dad. "We're having a family dinner next Sunday. Be there at 5 o'clock. I stared at the message for a long moment. No question mark. No, if you're free. Just another command. I didn't reply, but they weren't done. 2 days later, my Aunt Laura called. She's my mom's sister, and we've always been close. Closer than I am with anyone else in the family, to be honest. She has a way of seeing through the noise. "I just got off the phone with your mother," she said. "She's saying you emptied the emergency fund out of spite." "Spite," I repeated. "Laura, it was my money." "I know that," she said. "I told her that, but she's convinced you're going through some sort of rebellious phase." "I'm almost 30. "I know, honey." That's what I said. There was a pause. Then her voice dropped to a softer tone. James, I think they're planning something. What do you mean, I think? I think they're going to go public with this. Make it a big family issue. Drag you through the mud if they have to. I swallowed hard. Why? Because they don't like losing control. And you took control back. I sat with that for a long time. Laura was right, and I could feel it. The shift the way their texts stopped pretending to be concerned and started sounding more like ultimatums. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the money. And then it happened. That Friday, I got a call from my bank. Mr. Preston, the woman on the line, said, "We received a request this morning to access your account. It was flagged as suspicious since it came from someone who isn't listed." I frowned. "Someone claiming to be your father contacted us requesting account information and attempted to verify your account balance. We declined because he isn't authorized." My heart dropped. "Name?" She hesitated. Stephen Preston, relationship listed as father." I almost dropped the phone. They were still trying to get their hands on my money, still trying to make me pay. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about Ryan's rent. It wasn't just about Dad's mortgage. This was about ownership, about control. I was their plan B, and now I was a problem they needed to eliminate. I froze, the account locked down. Everything changed. Passwords, called my credit card companies, flagged my credit reports, even changed the PIN on my phone. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I started gathering receipts, screenshots, bank statements, text messages, even those old voicemails from Mom and Dad asking me to cover Ryan's truck repairs, his gaming setup, the camera, the drone, the deposit for the apartment. Every single favor they had ever asked under the guise of family. Because I finally understood something. This wasn't just dysfunction. It was manipulation, calculated, intentional, and if I didn't do something soon, they were going to ruin me. Not just emotionally, financially. And then the last straw Sunday came. I didn't go to dinner, but I did get a message from an old family friend, Mr. Callahan, my dad's longtime buddy from church. He and I used to talk whenever I visited. He was one of the few people from their circle I genuinely respected. His message was short. "Hey James, just wanted to say sorry about what your dad said this morning. Didn't seem right to drag you like that in front of everyone." I blinked, reread it, called him. He picked up on the second ring. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Your dad gave a little speech during the service today, said he was heartbroken, that you turned your back on your family, that you stole money meant for all of them and left them struggling." My blood ran cold. What I just thought you should know. It didn't sit right with me. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. That was it. That was the betrayal I couldn't forgive. They hadn't just disrespected me. They tried to destroy my name. They turned me into the villain in their story. But they forgot one thing. I know everything, and I never fight dirty. But I fight smart. The first thing I did after that call wasn't scream or cry or throw something against the wall, though I wanted to. I sat back in my desk chair and opened a blank document. I titled it, "The Fall," not because I planned to stay there, but because I needed a place to start. I listed everything line by line, from the first favor I ever did for Ryan, spotting him $100 for textbooks freshman year, to the most recent text where Dad demanded I step up because I had no real responsibilities. I listed all the payments I'd made from the emergency fund, every wire transfer, every Zelle, every "I'll pay you back." That never happened. The truck repair, the security deposit, the PlayStation, the overdue credit card bill I paid without interest. The time I floated the electric bill for the house because my parents said Ryan had forgotten and they didn't want to stress him out. It took for hours, but when I finished, I had a document 12 pages long, 12 pages of being used, 12 pages of being the stable one, 12 pages of quiet sacrifices no one had ever thanked me for. I wasn't angry. I was tired, and that kind of tired goes deeper than sleep. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd gotten here. Not the specifics. I knew the specifics, but the why. Why had I let it go on so long? Why did I keep showing up every Sunday like a dog returning to a master that occasionally kicked it? The truth hit me hard because I was afraid of being alone. Because no matter how dysfunctional they were still my family. And I thought maybe deep down, they loved me the same way I loved them. Turns out, love isn't always what you think it is. Sometimes it's conditional, sometimes it's performative, and sometimes it's just leverage. The week after the church incident was one of the loneliest of my life. Aunt Laura texted me daily, checking in, offering comfort. But everyone else, cousins, old family friends, even my godmother, went radio silent like I'd been erased. I could feel the narrative being rewritten in real time. James is selfish. James stole. James abandoned his family. There's something terrifying about knowing you're the only one telling the truth, but no one wants to hear it. At work, I went through the motions. Meetings, emails, code fixing, broken logic in a back-end system, while my own life was unraveling like thread. My manager noticed. "You good, man?" he asked one afternoon while we were waiting for a Zoom call to start. "I'm okay." I lied. "Just family stuff." He nodded like he understood. But how could he? How could anyone really? It was a Wednesday night when I hit my lowest point. I had picked up takeout from this Thai place I loved, used to love, and brought it home, sat on the couch, and realized I hadn't spoken to another person all day. Not out loud, not face-to-face, not even the cashier at the restaurant. I sat there eating pad seat U out of a plastic container, watching a muted episode of Jeopardy, and feeling like a ghost in my own life. That was when the panic attack hit. It wasn't dramatic, no flailing, no gasping, just a tightness in my chest, a sense that something inside me was imploding, and a crushing wave of what's the point anymore that made it hard to breathe. I dropped my fork, leaned forward, and held my head in my hands. Willing myself to just feel normal again, I didn't, not for a while. But when it passed, when the wave receded and I was still there, heart-pounding, shirt damp with sweat, I realized something. I had survived, I had reached the bottom, and it hadn't killed me. So what now? I started with therapy. Just Googled local therapist for family trauma and picked the one whose website didn't make me roll my eyes. Her name was Dana, and she wore chunky glasses and cardigans and had a voice that made you feel like nothing you said could shock her. Our first session was clunky. I didn't know where to start, but eventually the words came tumbling out. By the third session, I told her everything. The money, the favoritism, the manipulation, the church speech. She didn't gasp. She didn't call them monsters. She just said, "That sounds incredibly painful, James. You were never allowed to be your own person, were you?" And that unlocked something I hadn't known was stuck. Because she was right. I had been the default fixer for so long that I didn't know who I was outside of being the guy who made problems disappear. So I started figuring it out. I went through my bank statements and cut out every subscription, every recurring payment, every expense that wasn't mine. No more group Spotify family plan, no more shared Costco card. I changed my number, got a new email, deactivated every social media account where they could tag or message me. I didn't announce it. I just disappeared from their digital world. I took a week off work and did nothing but read Walk Journal. I started cooking for myself again, not out of necessity, but because I wanted to. I made things I'd never tried before: shakshuka risotto, homemade pizza dough. I played music while I cooked, jazz, old school soul. For the first time in my adult life, I was feeding myself in more ways than one. Then came the next step: boundaries. I made a list not of rules for them, but rules for me. I don't give money to people who refuse to work. I don't attend events where I'm not respected. I don't answer messages that guilt trip me. I don't explain myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. I don't betray myself to keep the peace. It sounds simple, but when you've spent your whole life being the good one, the reliable one, saying no feels like setting the world on fire. Except it wasn't the world. It was just their illusion of who I was. Aunt Laura remained the only one still reaching out. She came over one night with a bottle of wine and a tin of her famous lemon squares. "I can't believe what they're saying about you," she said. "It's like they've rewritten history." "I know," I said quietly, "but I don't have the energy to argue anymore." She looked at me long and hard. "You don't have to argue, but you can protect yourself." "I'm trying." "You're doing better than that, James." I smiled for the first time in days. That weekend, I got a call from my old college roommate, Kevin. We hadn't talked in over a year. Life had gotten busy, but he'd heard through mutual friends that I was going through something. "You want to get out of town for a few days?" he asked. "Come crash with me in Denver. Just you, me, and some mountain air." I booked the flight the next morning. 3 days in Denver turned into a mental reset I didn't know I needed. We hiked. We grilled steaks. We talked about stupid college memories and laughed until my sides hurt. One night, sitting on his balcony overlooking the skyline, Kevin turned to me and said, "Dude, you seem lighter. Like, finally you." That stuck with me. I was lighter. Not because the pain was gone, but because I wasn't carrying their weight anymore. I returned home with a clearer head and a stronger spine. And that's when I saw the message. A certified letter had arrived while I was away, neatly typed. No return address. I opened it. Inside was a formal demand, an invoice actually from my father, stating that I owed the family a share of $24,000 for unapproved withdrawal of community emergency funds and financial damage caused by breach of family trust. He had the audacity to bill me. There was a deadline: 2 weeks. There was a threat. Failure to comply may result in legal action. No signature, just S. Preston, head of household. I read it 3 times. Then I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not a broken laugh, a freeing one. Because that letter, that was proof. Proof that this wasn't about love, it was about control. And he had just handed me the match I needed to burn the whole illusion down. But I didn't storm over there. I didn't scream. I didn't retaliate yet. I called Dana instead. I told her everything. And when I finished, she said, "You have 2 choices now, James. You can spend your energy defending yourself, or you can spend it building something so strong they can never touch you again." That night, I started a new document. I titled it The Rise, and I knew exactly how it would begin. The document began with 4 words: "Let's keep this clean." Not because I wanted to be civil, but because I wanted to be careful. I knew what I was dealing with now. This wasn't a petty family squabble anymore. My father had crossed a line when he tried to weaponize legal threats against me. The man who once taught me how to tie my shoes now wanted to tie a noose around my wallet. And if he thought he could scare me into silence, he had no idea who he'd just pick a fight with. I titled the file The Rise because that's exactly what it would be. Not revenge out of rage, but reconstruction from the rubble, layered with strategy, leverage, and just the right touch of poetic irony. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to stoop to their level. I was going to build something so unshakable, so deliberate, that when I finally made my move, it would leave a permanent mark. The first thing I did was find a lawyer. I didn't go to some billboard ad in a strip mall. I went to a former client of mine from my consulting days, a sharp, meticulous estate lawyer named Victor. We'd worked together on a back-end system for his firm a couple years back, and I remembered how detail-oriented he was. The kind of guy who could spot a loophole in a contract like a hawk spotting a mouse in a field. I emailed him, got a situation involving family, a shared bank account, and a fake invoice. Need advice and discretion, you game. He called me within the hour. By the end of that week, I had every financial transaction I'd ever made involving my family categorized, time-stamped, and linked to bank statements. Victor helped me draw up a counter-statement, something formal but razor-sharp, that clarified the ownership of the account, the unilateral contributions I made, and the fact that no verbal or written agreement had ever existed about the account being communal. Victor chuckled when he saw my documentation. James, he said, if I had half my clients this prepared, I'd be out of a job. He advised I not respond directly to the invoice. Instead, Victor advised me to preserve every document and prepared a formal legal response in case my father actually filed a lawsuit. Nothing public, but enough to plant a flag in the sand if things escalated, just in case my father really was dumb enough to try and take it to court. But that was just the defense. I had bigger plans for the offense. See, the thing about being the quiet one for so long is people forget how much you see. They think silence means passivity. They think obedience equals obliviousness. What they don't realize is silence is storage. And I had been archiving for years. Every backhanded compliment, every guilt trip, every moment I'd stepped aside while Ryan was handed something I had to work twice as hard for. I remembered when my parents gave Ryan their old SUV when he wrecked his car, but made me buy mine off Craigslist and pay for the insurance myself. I remembered when Ryan flunked out of college and they blamed the unfair curriculum. But when I graduated early, they told me I was just lucky. But now I had more than memories. I had receipts. Literal ones. See, during my college years, my dad had me co-sign on a small business loan. I was 21, eager to please, and stupidly trusted that he knew what he was doing. The business was a small remodeling company he tried to spin up with a buddy from church. It never got off the ground. He defaulted on the payments 3 years later, and I had paid off the remaining $7,300 because the bank came after me when he ghosted. At the time, I chalked it up to bad luck. Now it was evidence. I filed a credit report dispute and opened a legal inquiry into the loan's mismanagement. It was an optional move, but the beauty of it was control. Not to sue him, not to expose him, just to remind him. Next, I contacted Aunt Laura. I didn't want to drag her into anything, but I knew if there was anyone in the family who really knew what was going on behind the curtain, it was her. I need to ask you something, I said when we met at a local cafe. And I need total honesty. Of course, she said, setting down her tea. What is it? When did this turn the family? When did I become the outsider? She sighed. Probably when you started succeeding on your own. I blinked. What? You didn't need them. That scared them. Your father especially. He always needed someone to have the upper hand over. You were easy to control until you weren't. She leaned forward. You built your life by playing the long game. That's what terrifies them. Her words settled into my bones like steel. I showed her the invoice. She shook her head. This is disgusting. Then she pulled out her phone. What are you doing? I asked. I'm showing you something. She scrolled for a minute, then turned the screen toward me. A photo of my dad at church speaking to the congregation with a mic in one hand and my name on a giant slide behind him. He hadn't just mentioned me at the service. He'd built an entire lesson around me titled The Dangers of Selfishness in the Family, with photos of me as a kid and a bullet point list of my failures as a son. I felt the blood drain from my face. Laura, when was this? Last Sunday, my friend recorded it. She didn't know I was your aunt. I stared at the image. This wasn't just character assassination. This was defamation. Victor's advice echoed in my head. You can spend your energy defending yourself or build something they can't touch. Well, now I was going to do both. That night, I began writing a letter. Not to them, but to myself. A mission statement, a vow, a promise that I would never again shrink to make others comfortable, that I would own my life every inch of it. And then I went to work. I updated my LinkedIn profile and portfolio, applying for positions outside my city, bigger markets, better companies. I wasn't just going to escape them. I was going to outgrow them so completely that they'd choke on the dust I left behind. I called Kevin, asked if he knew anyone hiring in Denver. He did. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 interviews lined up, but I wasn't done here yet. The final step was giving my father one last opportunity to face the truth. See, my parents had no idea how much I knew about the church speech, about the bank request, about Ryan's LLC. So I decided to give them one last chance, a test. I texted my dad, hey, I want to talk. Let's have dinner. Just you and me. He replied in under 5 minutes. Glad to hear it. Olive Tree on Main. 7:00 p.m. Perfect. He thought I was coming to apologize, to make amends, to beg forgiveness, and return to my role as the obedient son. But I had something else in mind. I packed a folder neatly labeled, and when I sat down across from him at that restaurant, I smiled for the first time in months, because now I held every card. I arrived at Olive Tree 10 minutes early, dressed neatly in a blue button-down and a quiet resolve that felt like armor. The folder under my arm wasn't thick, but it held the kind of weight paper can't measure. Truth, receipts, boundaries, power. The restaurant was dimly lit, filled with soft clinks of silverware and quiet chatter. The kind of place my dad always picked when he wanted to feel important. He walked in right on time, still wore that old brown jacket like it was a badge of honor. His expression was calm, maybe even a little smug, like a man who believed the storm had passed and the prodigal son had finally returned to beg for shelter. "James," he said, sitting across from me without hesitation. "I'm glad you reached out. I figured it was time to clear a few things up." He gave a satisfied nod, folded his napkin and ordered a coffee like we were two diplomats negotiating peace. "You know," he said, "after the waitress left, the family went through rough patches. But I believe in second chances, and I'm willing to forgive how this all unfolded, assuming we can come to a mature understanding." That's what he opened with. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I was wrong," just, "I'm willing to forgive you." I didn't touch my menu. Instead, I slid the folder across the table and watched as he hesitated, then opened it. Inside were 5 neatly labeled tabs: joint account history, personal contributions with bank confirmations, text logs with demands, business loan agreement from 2015, public speech defamation evidence. He flipped through the pages slowly, like someone scanning a script they hadn't auditioned for. "What is this?" he asked, finally, fingers tightening slightly on the paper. "Documentation," I said calmly. "For the arbitration board and for my lawyer. I figured since you were sending invoices, we should keep things professional." His face hardened. "You went to a lawyer? You threatened legal action." I reminded him, so I took it seriously. He flipped back to the first section, the joint account logs, his mouth twitching as he realized every deposit was from me. Every single one. "You don't need to do this," he said, lowering his voice. "Actually, I do, James," he said, using that tone he always used when he wanted me to feel ashamed. "You're talking about tearing this family apart." "No," I said. "You already did that. I'm just not holding the pieces anymore." He sat back, crossing his arms. "And what do you want?" "An apology." "I don't want anything from you." I said, "This isn't a negotiation. It's a notice." His eyebrows lifted. "A notice?" I pulled out one last sheet from the folder. This one wasn't for court. It wasn't a receipt. It was a letter, a personal statement I had written and printed the night before. 1-page type. It said, "Effective immediately. I am withdrawing from all family financial responsibilities and any expectation thereof. I will not fund, cosign, or contribute to anyone's rent, mortgage, debt, hobby, or business. I am not your bank. I am not your safety net. I am your son, not your solution. Any further requests, demands, or manipulations will be documented, and if necessary, escalated through legal or civil channels. If you are capable of seeing me as a person rather than a resource, I may be open to repairing our relationship, but only on the basis of mutual respect. I wish you well, but I no longer carry what isn't mine." He read it twice. Then he chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You think you're better than your own family now?" "No," I said, standing. "I think I'm free." And I left. I didn't wait for him to follow. Didn't turn to see his reaction. I walked out of that restaurant into the cool night air like I was stepping into a life that finally belonged to me. The fallout didn't take long. By the next morning, my mother had texted me a frantic paragraph. "Your father said you're threatening to sue us. James, what is going on? This isn't who you are." I didn't reply. Then Ryan chimed in. "Bro, you really going to play victim? I'm literally being evicted because of you." Again, no reply. 2 days later, I received an email from my father. It was short. "I withdraw the invoice. I hope you find peace." That was it. No apology, no admission, just surrender. And for once, that was enough because I had found peace. The job interviews in Denver went better than expected. A month later, I was offered a senior role at a cybersecurity firm, higher salary, full relocation assistance, and a fresh start. I took it without hesitation. Packing up my apartment felt like closing a chapter. Every box I sealed was a layer of guilt being stripped away. I sold the couch Ryan once crashed on, donated the old lamp my mom gave me in college, kept only what was mine. Before I left, I met with Aunt Laura one last time. "You sure about this?" she asked as we sat on my now bare living room floor. "I've never been more sure of anything." She reached into her purse and handed me a small envelope. From me, not them. Inside was a card. It said, "I saw you even when they didn't." I hugged her tightly. "Thank you," I said, voice breaking. "You don't owe anyone anything but your own peace, James." And with that, I drove to Denver. New city, new job, new silence. Only this time, it wasn't the silence of suppression. It was the silence of space. Space to grow, space to breathe, space to be me. 6 months passed. I never spoke to my parents again. Ryan did eventually get evicted. I saw it in a court notice online when I checked the LLC records. He disappeared from social media shortly after. Last I heard, he moved back in with them. My parents sold their house soon after. Rumors of debt, maybe even foreclosure, but I didn't ask. Didn't need to. They had made their choices and I had made mine. One afternoon, I was walking through a bookstore in Denver when I saw a little notebook on a display shelf. The cover said, "Closure is not something they give you. It's something you build." I bought it, took it home, and wrote one final note inside. "They didn't break me. They sharpened me."